Hey guys, in this video I will be explaining how to survive Freehold. It's a very fun dungeon, it's a very popular dungeon to run, and I will be doing this through Mythic dungeon tools. Link will be in the description below. If you're not already using this add-on, I can highly recommend it. It gives you everything you want to know about the dungeon when it comes to pathing and strategy. It's amazing. So going into Freehold, you usually are going to pull these three packs together. Sometimes you just go straight to the mini boss, the lieutenant, the awakened mob that's over here. But usually you pull these three packs together, and what you have to watch out for here is mostly the frontal from the enforcer. It's very hard hitting, and it's kind of hard to see in the middle of everything. So you just need to keep a good, at least if you're playing melee, you need to keep a good track where this is facing. That is the most important ability. The other ability that's actually pretty important on this pack, or these packs in general, are the mastiffs. On affixes like raging, if you don't have a suit, they cast their own enrage, and it can make their crippling bite on high keys be extremely deadly. Like, you can get one shot if you get both of the mastiffs bite at the same time. These will usually go on the tank, but if the tank is kiting, which he usually will be doing towards the end of this pull once his mitigation runs out, then it will go on the closest target. So melee DPS again need to be very careful on towards the end when the tank is kiting. After that, the most common route to take is to drag the blob into the first boss room. Not really too much to say about this, just don't stand in this shit and DPS the tentacles. I'm mostly going to be focusing on the trash packs themselves and not the awakened mobs, as they are constant throughout all the dungeons. So yeah, you move into the first boss room and you have to play either this pack or this pack to make the boss spawn. The most common one by far is Group 8, the Double Enforcer Double Mastiff pack. Again, the same as the first pull. You have to watch for the frontals and melee, and be careful of the dog bites that do slow you and can make it harder to dodge at the end. The first major hinder of this fight on higher keys is definitely the first boss. The shots in his first phase are extremely deadly and can be... you can get basically 2 taps if you're a squishy class without any mitigation. I would suggest using every single defensive and health stone that you have to survive this phase, at least health stones and healing potions, because in the later phases you are not going to be basically, if you don't get one shot, then you will survive anyway in the later phases. So definitely use all health stones, healing potions, and those kinds of abilities and personals on this fight. In phase 2, the bird will start flying up, and you need to have one of your team members bait the vile coating that he throws down on the ground. That's pretty standard strategy. I'm not going to go too much into like the basic strategy. It's more going to be on specific things that you can do to live the mechanics. So the frontal shot that he casts in phase 2 hits extremely hard. It's when you start getting into higher keys, it will basically just kill you straight out if you don't react fast enough. It is possible to react. You have half a second to see if it's on you and then press a personal. And you don't want to be standing in line or next to other people, because he will face someone and cast a 0.5 second cast, and you have to react within that cast to press your defensive, or you will take a lot of damage. You can alternatively outrange the shot as well. It has a 30 yard max range, which makes it pretty easy for range. They can just stand outside and do whatever. But for melee, they either have to run out or be ready to pop a personal if it's on them. You can also pre-press your personals. For example, rogues can pre-use feint for every second, and it basically covers them for every second, and then they usually have cheat death to cover if they don't. So, for example, a rogue can roll his cooldowns like pre-feint, and then if he doesn't get hit, then that's fine. And then he is open for the next one, so if he gets shot there, he procs his cheat death. Then he pre-feints the next, and then the next one he can pre-cloak, and then pre-feign again, and then he has to run out for like the 4th shot, and that is only if he procs his cheap death. So you can stay in until he procs that. That's just one example of many things that you can do to live this. After the first boss, some people play the Enforcer on the bridge, kind of a big time loss, but I think we're going to see a lot more of the strategy where everyone but a stealther, usually a healing druid or a rogue, or any a feral druid or anyone else that can stealth, will go into everyone else will go into this portal and move over to Samrak, and then basically the stealther will activate this mini boss, and then you play this here. So that leads us into the next boss room. This is a pretty defining room, to be honest. It's a lot of tank damage. People need to be aware of how much damage the tank is going to be taking when he has a Brine Scale free casting on him. Like, this is a very common pull to do with a Trapper, a Brute, a Brine Scale, and some random mobs. The tank is going to be absolutely demolished by this pack, and it's important you want to do everything in your power to help him out, like stuns on the Brute. The Brute is really, really hard hitting mob. So the Brute and Trapper together, and if the Brine Scale is free casting, is extremely deadly for the tank. So definitely a pull to watch out for the tank here. Just help the tank out and you're going to be fine. Another pull that's pretty common to do is you do like double pulls in these areas, like pulls like this, or maybe even this. This is really scary because this is Quadra Harpooner. I wouldn't recommend this, but some people even pull triple pack here. So they pull all of this together in one pull, and this is where the control of the DPS really comes into play. You need to be able to stop the Blind Rage. The Blind Rage and the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have Going Bananas, which is a fitting ability for a monkey. It's basically just a whirlwind around them. It deals a lot of damage, and if you don't, it's really easy to dodge. But that is not what is hard about this pack. What's hard about this pack is when you bring the Harpooners into it and they drag you into the spins, into the whirlwinds, and also into the fixates. So you have Scrappers as well, and they cast Blind Rage. That's the only ability they have. They will fixate on a target and run after it, and it hits really hard. Like, they increase their physical damage by 50%, and it just hurts a lot. So imagine you have double fixate on you, and there's a Banana Boy going on. You get dragged into that, you're instantly dead. You cannot really counter the Harpooners. You can be, they usually prioritize people in range. So if you're in melee, you cannot really get targeted by them. But that's why it's important to stay on top of the interrupts and stops, gouge, blind, fear, stunts, all of that stuff on the Scrappers and the Buccaneers. That is the most important thing to be able to live these big pulls that are kind of required to do really, really high Freehold keys. That's it for this area. Going into the second boss, it really depends what combo you have. This boss is not really scary apart from the tank. The tank is taking a lot of damage if you don't have Eudora. But if you do have Eudora active on a week, which is 2 out of 3 weeks, you need to be able to counter her shots. Warrior tank is extremely powerful for this because they can intervene the target. They can use a target of target's mouse over macro and intervene whoever's getting shot, and it's super, super powerful. Something else you can do is you can stand behind this pillar under the house as a ranged, and you can line of sight the shots. So that's also super, super helpful. You can vanish it, you can blade dance it as a demon hunter. You can, if you have basically any dodge ability. Outlaw parry, riposte doesn't work, but assassination evasion does. So that is super helpful. You need to be able to keep track of the shots and basically help the healer out with topping people off. Like, getting 2 shots in a row can be, even 1 shot can be very, very scary on this fight. Going into the next part of the dungeon, it kind of depends on what event you have going into the next part, because you are going to be either doing the build rat event or the drink, like that's the drinking event, or you do the knuckle duster event, and that dictates what mobs you get rid of in the next area. So, for example, on the build rat weeks, you no longer have to deal with the casters, so you don't have to deal with interrupting the frost blasts. So that's nice, but you still have to deal with all the harpooners and the scrappers. So you still have to interrupt the fixates, but you no longer have the banana boys or the casters. So it's basically an easier version of the pulls you are doing in the second boss room if you're going really big, where you remove one of the factions in this pull. So it becomes exactly the same because you usually play it in the Ludwig area, but you have to stay on top of the stops and the interrupts, but it's easier because there's less. So literally the same pull, only you remove some mechanics. Ludwig can be played with a lot of mobs, and again, this is where you need to watch for your tank. Your tank is going to be taking a lot of damage. Ludwig hits really, really hard for some reason. He is a turtle, he walks slow, he can be kited very easily. But he is definitely a scary mob to tank. You just face tank without mitigation. You can get easily clapped by it. So watch your tank on the Ludwig pull. You can pull a lot of things into Ludwig if you want to, like this pack over here, or this pack, or even crushers you can play with Ludwig. But it's not really... it depends on the affixes. Like, it is pretty good to do, because Ludwig himself doesn't really do a lot if you can just hide him around. But you really have to be aware of what you're doing if you want to do this. Throw attack is not too much to talk about. He is a pretty straightforward boss. He tosses some sharks around. Don't stand in the sharks. Don't stand in tornado. Don't stand in between the boss and the shark. And that's it. Just play good. What most people do after this boss is they clear this trash over here, and then they drag the tank guy all the way up to the last boss and play the last boss. So this is the pathing that I have here on my MDT is not gonna be a perfect pathing. So they either drag him here or kill him here and kill these two, but most people drag him all the way up to the boss and play Harlan together with the spider mini boss, which is located over here. So let's see here. Yeah, the spider always stays the same. So usually you always just drag whatever mini boss is on this position right here. You drag it over to the boss, and then you play the spider with the last boss. There are some strategies that will make you pull the enforcer pack into the boss, but I wouldn't really recommend it on live keys unless you really know what you're doing. And if you do, then this video isn't really helping you anyway, because you already know all of this stuff. Living last boss is not hard, but it can get out of control really fast. It's about stability. You need to be able to be on top of things, especially on fights like when it's Grievous or Quaking. You can easily fall behind as a healer. So this fight, in addition to doing a lot of damage to make it die fast, it is all about just playing safe. Just don't greed for damage. Don't stand in the cannon barrage. Don't stand in the fire. Make sure that you have some sort of personal if the Swift Savers are about to come in and you're low. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do as a DPS, especially on this fight, to make the healer's life a lot easier. So that is something to keep in mind. It is easy to heal until it's not. It's kind of a weird way of describing it, but it's the best way I know how to. After the fight, usually you're going to clean up the dungeon with something like this. So you finish off the dungeon with pulling some Ravagers. They obviously have the painful motivation cast that kills off the mobs. Not really too difficult to execute this. But yeah, in short, just watch out for the frontals in the first part. Make sure that you have stops on the second boss room, and keep track of the shots from the first boss and Eudora if you have it active, and you should be good to go. If this video helped you out in any way, please leave a like. Subscribe if you want more content like this, and if there's anything that you think I missed or you want clarified, just leave a question or a comment down below. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.